Welcome, everyone. So today we are going to hear a really great webinar from a couple of folks from UW Madison Arboretum. But before we get started, I just want to give you a few notices that you've heard before, if you've been here before. So we would love to see you here again for our future webinars and programs. If you're in the Port Washington area, we're having an in-person outdoor event at the library, trying to help monarch butterflies and teaching people how to do that. And then Chuck Hagner will be presenting on simple strategies to prevent bird window collisions, which this is really timely since we're leading into fall migration when a lot of birds do collide with windows. A few quick reminders, please remain muted. If you have any questions, we would love to hear them. Just please save them to the end. If you want to type them in, I will read them off to the presenters. And if you have any technical difficulties, feel free to put questions in the chat box or email us at info@wigglybevo.org, and we'll try to help you. If you're interested in volunteering and live around here, please, we would love to talk to you more. So check out our opportunities at this address. And last but not least, I would love to thank everyone who makes the webinars, but also other programs that we're doing possible. So all the folks here. And yeah, with that, I just want to quick introduce Nancy Sheehan and Julia Wooden, who will be giving a presentation today. And I'm going to just turn it over to them in 1 second. Nancy, did you get the prompt?
Yes, I am here and I can share. Hello, everybody. Let me get over to my share screen here. Hopefully that will, that didn't share the correct screen. I think I did this the last time when we were practicing, didn't I? Here. Obviously, didn't practice very well. Let's see, share screen. And it should go right to, all right, so why isn't it getting to the place? Can you help problem solve just a little bit?
Sure. Are you sharing a window or your entire screen?
I'm going to share my entire screen.
So do you have more than one monitor?
No. Oh, two. I do have two.
Okay, so I think what's happening is you're selecting the wrong monitor when it asks you which one to share. So if you stop sharing and restart, you should be able to pick the other one or drag your window onto that one.
That should be right there. All right, everybody, we're gonna get past this technical difficulty. I know it, because we did during the practice session. It came right up. So,
So when you hit share screen, do you see the options of what to share? Oh, yeah, it looks like a presentation now.
Yay!
Yay! Thank you.
Sorry, everybody, for that. You'd think after a year and some, I'd be proficient in all these different platforms, but anyway, it's always a little bit of a learning experience. So, welcome. I'm Nancy Sheehan. I coordinate Journey North, which is a program at the UW Madison Arboretum. I am hailing right now from Madison. And I'm so glad to meet you all virtually. I counted over 30 people, so thank you so much for participating today. And I'm going to talk all about Journey North. I'm very excited to share this program with you. And as Jen mentioned, I really want to hear everybody's questions and comments, but I will wait until the end of the presentation to gather those questions and answer your questions. So I have a couple talking points for our time together, and I wanted to run through Journey North's mission and vision and main program features, the range of projects that Journey North has under its umbrella, some of the threats that the species that we cover are facing, and the big message is what we all can do to help conserve and protect the species that we love. So, the big mission or the way I describe Journey North is a crowdsourced participatory science program that invites people from across North America to help track wildlife migration and seasonal change. Again, it's good to remember that Journey North is a transnational program. So we have participants from Canada, US, and Mexico primarily. We have a few people from Central America also participating. So a large territory, but of course, Wisconsin is near and dear to my heart. Our vision is that individuals, young and old, acting as ambassadors for migratory species can create a community of action, a kind of earth citizenship driving conservation. And I wanted to call out this point about earth citizenship. So Journey North is a citizen science program. I know that there's a lot of discussion within the citizen science community about the term citizen. And I just wanted to clarify and be as transparent as possible here that for Journey North, and I think for the Arboretum, I can speak for the Arboretum too, to say that it's not citizenship to a country, but a citizen for the earth, to the earth. So our mission and goals is to foster scientific understanding. We have about 550,000 reports that are submitted annually to Journey North by our volunteers. We have over 100,000 volunteers. The other goal is to raise awareness. So we have 36,000 subscribers to our news updates. And so lots of ways of communicating and sharing the enthusiasm and the findings of our volunteers and the data that they are submitting. We also have the goal of supporting environmental education. So if you look online, you'll find a wealth of materials, both targeting K through 13 educators, but also just sort of the general public. We have some key program features that I feel really proud of. So Journey North, of course, as a crowdsourced program, wants the crowd to participate. So we do everything we can to simplify our protocols. We really want to create few barriers for people to register and submit data. So that includes an online data entry portal. We are committed to open access to the data. And so we have lots of initiatives always, as technology is always evolving, we're trying to make sure that we're doing even more to create easy, open online data entry and access to our data. So as you can tell by our logo, of course, our flagship species is the Monarch butterfly. So we have, that's our main project is Monarch and Milkweed. Oops, did we forget one right here? Missed. Not to have favorites, but I love hummingbirds. So our other main project are hummingbirds. So our Journey North volunteers track ruby-throated, rufous, broad-tailed, black-chin, Annas, costas, and calliope hummingbirds. But we also, our volunteers also track red-winged blackbirds, common loons, bald eagles, Baltimore bullocks oriole, American robin, barn swallows. So we have quite a number of migratory species that our volunteers track. But as you know, there are a number of threats to these migratory species: pesticide and herbicide use, habitat loss, and climate change. I think that my colleague will be talking a little bit more about some of these threats, but I will mention that, as many of you know, or may know, that at the end of last year, the Fish and Wildlife Service found that the monarch butterfly warranted listing under the Endangered Species Act, but that it was precluded from listing the monarch butterfly due to other high priority actions that need to be taken, which anyway, there are a lot of species that need attention, but the monarch butterfly also does too. There has been recently, last year, World Wildlife Fund puts out estimates for population in the Monarch Biosphere Reserve, and they found that there was a 26% decrease in the presence of monarch in that biosphere reserve in central Mexico. The actual hectares occupied by the biosphere reserve and the area that the monarchs concentrate during the overwintering period has decreased dramatically. So you can just look at these numbers that I've put out here. It's gone from 93 to 2000. There were approximately 8 hectares of area occupied by the monarchs in the Monarch Butterfly Reserve. And then from 2011 to 2020, the average went down to 2.6 hectares. So that's a precipitous decline. You know, the same could be said for the hummingbird. The Fish and Wildlife Service recently listed hummingbirds as a conservation concern, particularly Allen's, the Costas, the Calliope, the Broadtail, and the Rufous. Then the Birding Breed Survey found that there was actually a 60% decrease since 74 for Rufous hummingbirds. So some troubling figures to put out there in front of you, but there is hope, and that's why I'm in the work, do the work that I do, because I firmly believe that we all can play a critical role and can make a difference. So I think I'm kind of the warm-up act perhaps for your July 31st event. I think you mentioned that you're going to be talking about creating homes for monarchs. Well, Journey North also provides a way for you to record your efforts in your gardens. If they're pollinator gardens, you can report to Journey North, and your garden will show up on our interactive habitat map. And I think this is just one way to show that each individual can only see one garden in their backyard. But if we see it on a map, we can see that it's really creating a patchwork quilt of really important critical habitat for these migratory species. And I'll put a plug in for our new yard sign, and you can just download that from our website if you want to put that in your garden. You can also, of course, as a citizen science program, help us track wildlife migration. And as I mentioned, we use easy to use protocols, and basically we're asking our volunteers to track observable events in the annual life cycle of plants and animals. And though that data reveals migratory journey of these species across time and space. So everybody always asks for me to focus a little bit on monarchs, because of course they have just a fascinating journey. So these next couple slides, I'll just regale you in some beautiful images of monarchs and their life cycle. So it is really, it's almost a gateway species to so many things in terms of change. So the monarch butterfly, this is the life cycle. The monarch lays eggs that are almost the size of a pinhead. These eggs mature in 3 to 5 days. The female monarch can lay an average of 700 eggs over its lifetime. The egg, once hatched, the larva goes through several stages and grows from 1 centimeter to 5 centimeters in about 11 to 18 days, then forms a chrysalis, and then, of course, has this wonderful metamorphosis. So I love watching all the changes that this beautiful migratory species undergoes. Of course, there's also a generational aspect to the monarch journey. So the monarchs overwinter, as I was mentioning, in Mexico. They leave that overwintering site at the end of February. And they start, once they arrive to their breeding territory, just across the border into Texas. The first generation of monarchs, the eggs are laid in the first generation, continues that migration northward, and goes actually through 3 generations before the 4th generation, which is called the super generation. And that's the generation that indeed then returns to its overwintering site in Mexico. So again, just an incredible story of the monarch. It's a journey, a transnational journey, of course. The monarch migration crosses the border from Mexico to the US and into Canada, and then returns again to Mexico. And I should mention also that the population is split into two. So there is a western population of monarch that overwinters along the Pacific Ocean, and that population is an even more dire is facing even more dire threats. So I just thought I would run through some of the things that you can do if you were interested in tracking monarchs in particular. Is in the spring, it's a year-round tracking effort. So in the spring, our volunteers are, once we send out a notice saying that the monarchs have left the Monarch Biosphere Reserve, and people start looking right away for those first arrival of monarchs. Our volunteers also let us know when the milkweeds first emerge. And so it's that early spring flush of activity. So it's first milkweed emergence, first arrival of monarchs, and first observations of monarchs' eggs and larvae. And in the summer, those observations continue. They're no longer the first, obviously, but our volunteers then continue to monitor the presence of milkweed, monarchs, and monarch breeding by letting us know that they see the monarch eggs and larvae. In the fall, of course, it's the return south of the monarch, and our volunteers track the occurrence of monarch roosts and peak migration events. That's when in some locations people are observing 10 and above hundreds of monarchs flying over. So those are peak monarch events. And then in the winter, I will mention that there is some indication that not all monarchs do complete their journey to Mexico. So last winter, journeying north with partners in Georgia Department of Natural Resources, University of Georgia, and other partners launched a targeted effort along the Gulf states, Georgia, South Carolina, Florida, and North Carolina, to track the presence of monarchs overwintering along the Gulf states and those southern states. So that's an interesting specific effort that was just launched last winter. Again, just to show you what you can see, so by contributing data, your data immediately goes onto our interactive maps, and anybody and everybody can watch the migration unfold on these interactive maps. So this is just from last spring, March 7th. They're already leaving the Monarch Biosphere Reserve in Mexico and moving into Texas. And then by March 28th, they've, monarchs have been sighted up towards St. Louis. And then by March 25th, you'll see that the maps are just an explosion of red dots, which means that they've arrived in almost up into Canada, and certainly have been found in Wisconsin. And again, the reverse can be seen on our interactive maps. This is just a quick snapshot of the fall migration tracking of the monarch roosts. And I tried to find an example of one in Port Washington. There wasn't one, but I found a roost sighting in New Holstein, which is a little bit north, I think, of Port Washington. And again, we let people know what's happening, migration happenings in our news updates. We allow the voice of our volunteers to tell the story as much as possible. So we do a lot of quotes, and of course, we feature the beautiful photos that that folks submit along with their report. So this is towards the end. I hope you will register with Journey North and become a member. Even if you don't submit sightings, you can participate by following the news and following along with the migration on our interactive maps. I think that's it at this point. So we'll stop sharing.
So give me 1 second to switch over to Julia. So Julia, you should be ready to go.
Awesome. Okay. Could someone confirm if you can see the screen?
Yes, we can.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for being here. Like Nancy said, we really appreciate you spending your Wednesday evening with us. And she gave a great introduction to citizen science and some of the issues in monarch biology. And for those of you considering Journey North and, will I or won't I think it's such a fantastic and truly easy way to contribute, to just simply report your sightings. It's a really excellent program. And it kind of ties in nicely with what I'm going to be talking about tonight, which is the Monarch Larva Monitoring Program, or that's a mouthful, so we like to shorten it down to MLMP. And as I mentioned, I'm Julia Whitten, and not only do I coordinate the MLMP, I also coordinate a handful of other citizen science projects at the UW-Madison Arboretum. Now, my disclaimer is that I'm relatively new to this role, about 6 months in, so I would love to be able to answer your questions, and if I cannot, I certainly know someone who can, and I'll try to find an answer for you. So Nancy covered a little bit of the individual life cycle of the monarch, which is certainly one of the most unique and fascinating life cycles out there. For us at MLMP, the two parts of the life cycle that we're really interested in are, of course, the egg stage here and the larva stage. So just to really quickly touch on that again, we have females laying eggs on milkweed leaves, typically the underside of them. They stay like that for about 4 to 5 days before the caterpillar will actually chew its way out of that egg casing, eat the rest of it, because why waste the resources, and then goes through as a caterpillar. We have these 5 different stages or instars, and the term instar just means the stages between molting or shedding their skin. And so we have right here, it's a little bit tricky to see, but we have a very small egg there. It's about the size of a pinhead. And then we go into our first instar that comes out of the egg, second, third, fourth, and fifth. And something that I think is absolutely fascinating is that from the egg to the fifth instar, that's a 2,000 time increase in body mass happening in under 3 weeks. So that's pretty astonishing how quickly they're able to grow. So we have our female monarch here, and she's ovipositing or laying eggs on, as you can see in this photo, typically the underside of milkweed leaves. Great photo here in the middle of an egg compared to the head of a pin. This is on the underside of a leaf again. And then over here on the right, we see just towards the end of the egg development, the caterpillar inside develops this black head. And so if you ever see an egg that has a little bit of a black head in there, it means it's probably about to emerge. And so the key point here that I hope you're picking up on is the really significant relationship between monarchs and milkweed. If we don't have milkweed, we don't have monarchs. It's just that simple. Milkweed is required in the only group of plants that female monarchs can lay their eggs on, and milkweed is also required for the caterpillar to eat before it becomes a pupa and eventually an adult. So without milkweed, there's a variety of milkweed species that exist in North America. So we actually have over 100 different species native to North America. In this region that we are all a part of, we're going to see quite a bit of world milkweed, common milkweed, which is this one right here, swamp milkweed, and butterfly milkweed. Butterfly milkweed is probably the most common over the entire monarch range, widest distribution of any of the milkweed species. And this one right here is pretty fascinating. So this is desert milkweed that's found in Arizona, and the leaves are really, really small. So what the caterpillars do instead of eating the leaves is they'll actually eat the whole stem of the plant, which I think is so cool. Moving clockwise here, so we have some green milkweed that can be found in South Central area, and then we have some showy milkweed, which can be really common in on the West Coast. We have another photo over here of 12 different varieties of native milkweed, and just wanted to really highlight that while the shape of the leaf and even the shape of the plant can differ, really the common feature here is the shape of the flowers. There's something the structure and the geometry of the flowers is very similar. And if anyone wants to talk later about this or ask a question, I would be happy to go into it. But this photo in the middle is of a very controversial species of milkweed, which is tropical milkweed. Controversial depending on where you are, where you plant it, and whether it impacts the cues for the monarchs to actually migrate south in the fall. So as I was saying, significant relationship between monarchs and milkweed, and we are definitely seeing a major milkweed deficit. So research estimates that we need to plant another at least 1.8 billion milkweed stems to maintain and improve monarch populations, which is a huge number for sure. So as I mentioned, these 1.8 billion milkweed plants that we need to plant to save monarchs, this all relates to the loss of breeding habitat. So that's going to be the major factor that is contributing to monarch population declines that Nancy touched on. Additionally, climate change, she also touched on, and of course, a lot of these stressors and environmental concerns are going to be the same for a lot of different species. So some of the species she spoke about as well, the exact same concerns. So, loss of breeding habitat, climate change. And where we're seeing an increase in hot, dry summers in parts of North America, we actually have research to show that these hot, dry summers are associated with lower monarch numbers in Mexico the next winter. Another concern for them, as with many different species of insects and animals, are going to be the use of pesticides and herbicides. And lastly, we are seeing, though hopefully we have curbed it, some loss of these overwintering grounds in Mexico. And I absolutely love these photos. I have never been to Mexico to experience this, but now that I'm in the monarch world, I think I absolutely have to go to experience this. Just looks really, truly magical to see the monarchs congregating in these overwintering grounds and how they're just absolutely covering these oyamel fir trees. And a really fantastic photo on the bottom here of like a cloud of orange. And so really astonishing to think about how many monarchs are contributing to that kind of swath of orange, and also how far they travel to get there. Adult monarchs weigh less than a paperclip, and they can travel 50 to 100 kilometers in a day. So just really an astonishing animal. So if there's one thing I hope that you remember from my portion of the presentation, it is that the most important thing that you could do for monarch populations is create habitat. Plant milkweed, plant milkweed, plant milkweed. So where you live, where you work, and where you play. These can be in both urban and suburban spaces. So, something as simple as your yard. Our Arboretum director, Karen, took this photo in Illinois just to show the potential. We have these monoculture lawns and there's so much room for improvement there in terms of making pollinator-friendly gardens. A few different other areas just to touch on that we can definitely make improvements in terms of creating habitat. So we have some of these agriculture set-aside lands. So in this photo here, we have a cornfield on the left, and this is what's called a prairie strip on the right. We also have potential in our rights of ways, the side of the highways, side of the train tracks. There's a lot of space there that we could be planting pollinator-friendly plants. And there's also, potential to have more protected land where we are able to have more, native species to support pollinators. So, talked a little bit about monarchs and some of the issues that are affecting them. So now I'm kind of presenting you a solution or an opportunity to get involved in MLMP. So our mission ultimately is to collect long-term data on the larval monarch populations and milkweed habitat. And we're focusing specifically on distribution and abundance during the breeding season in North America. The project was started in 1997, so we're doing a pretty good job so far of collecting some of this long-term data. And since then, we have over 1,000 sites that are monitored, primarily in the US, but also a few in Canada and Mexico. And what's really neat is that many volunteers will actually have multiple sites that they monitor, so you don't have to stick to just one. And I will get in a second about what constitutes a site. So before that, this is just a map on the right-hand side of all of the different monitoring sites that we have had recorded with MLMP. So definitely concentrated in the Northeast here, which is fantastic. And I think this summer we have at least 50 sites being monitored in Wisconsin, though I will put in a pitch that it is not too late to start monitoring. We have some people who gain interest or find out about our project in the middle of the season, in the middle of the summer, and they think that they have to wait until next year, and that's not true at all. Honestly, any data is valuable data for us. So if you're sitting here thinking, hey, maybe I'll monitor, it's not too late to do so. So what's involved in monitoring? This project has about 5 different activities that you could take part in. The main one is what we call activity 1, and that's measuring monarch density and distribution. So to put it really, really simply, you monitor a milkweed site weekly for monarch eggs and larvae. So you count them, you identify them, the larva, to which instar stage it is, and then you report your data to us. And this site, it can be, a garden, a park, a roadside, a prairie, what have you, just as long as you have permission to actually be on that land. So yeah, you can pick a site. It can be your backyard. It can be anywhere that you are allowed to be. Minimum of 10 plants is what we're looking for you to monitor. Once per year, we also ask you to provide a site description that gives us a little bit of more information about where your site is, the type of land, are you in an urban area, suburban area? And we also ask you to tell us about the different milkweed species in your site and the density of them. So that's only once a year, and then otherwise you have this weekly monitoring that we ask you to do. So if that sounds like too much for you, which is totally fair, everybody has a lot going on, you can also submit non-site reports, of monarch larvae or adults. So if you're looking for somewhere to report a sighting of a monarch adult, you could do so with us at MLMP, and you could also do so with Journey North. Our only concern is that if you are reporting your sightings of adult monarchs to one of our organizations, please don't do it to both, because then that can give us a little bit of false data. So how to get involved? It is pretty simple, and you're going to see me plug this website a bunch of different times. Our website is a fantastic resource, though I do understand there's so much on there, it can be a little bit overwhelming at first. But the place to start is to watch our online training videos. They're not too long. And you also have an option if you'd like to attend a virtual / in-person training. They were virtual for the past 2 years, but typically they're in person in the spring or in the summer. Some people prefer that over kind of doing it online. As I mentioned, we have 5 different activities for you to take part in. So it's up to you to decide what you want to do. Activity 1, the one I mentioned just now, of finding a site and counting your eggs and your caterpillars. That is activity 1 and is one of the more simple ones. And then they actually kind of increase in complexity, which I think is a nice feature of a project, so that if you get into this and maybe you think, oh, this is boring or this is too easy, there's definitely room for growth. So after you've decided which activity you'd like to collect data for, you have to find a site to monitor, download and print off our data sheets, which are have really excellent instructions to go along with them, make an account on our website, and then go do your super fun monitoring. Hopefully you see lots of fantastic things. And finally, report your data to our web portal. It's really not super complicated. And I chose some photos here of kids so that I would remember to tell everyone, this is actually a really family-friendly project. We do have a component of this project that's integrated into like a K-12 curriculum. And we do have families that do this with their children. We typically say as young as 6 years old, requires a little more parental supervision, but we do have children as young as 10 years old who are actually doing this project on their own and submitting their data, maybe with help from parents. So what you need for success in this project, not too much. So the skills that we ask for is just record keeping. Quite simply, can you fill out the data sheet? Can you read your own handwriting? Can you remember to take notes? We also ask that you can recognize different milkweed species. If this isn't something that you can do naturally, there's so many different guides out there to help you. There's so many different apps. You can just kind of scan and it'll tell you what milkweed species it is that you're looking at. And lastly, identifying the monarch life stages. And I will say, out of all of them, this is probably the one that is the trickiest. And on the right here, I've included a photo composition of the 5 different instar stages. And this might make it look a little bit easier than it is, because size is not the greatest indicator of which stage it's at. What we're actually looking for is the relative length of the tentacles that are on the head and also towards the tail end, and the length of the tentacles to the length of the body. In addition to that, some materials, as I mentioned, you can print out data sheets, and it's helpful if you have a hand lens. So the eggs that I showed you before, like I said, about the size of a pinhead. And before, I guess, as you're learning how to identify them, it can be tricky to know, okay, am I seeing an egg, or am I seeing a latex drop, which sometimes can look very similar to it, or am I maybe seeing, I don't know, a piece of debris or an aphid? So a hand lens or a magnifying glass, or I've seen some people use the magnifying function on their phone to kind of scan over a leaf. And that'll be really helpful as you kind of learn how to identify an egg. And then once you have it down, it'll stick with you. And lastly, there are actually some physical requirements to this project, just that you need to be able to get around your garden easily or your site and be able to crouch or kneel to see the underside of leaves. Having said that, we had a meetup with some citizen scientists recently, and a woman had bought a extendable mirror. I'm not sure what the original function is for, but it was pretty brilliant. She said she didn't want to have to, get on her knees and look under all of the different plants. And so she was using this little retractable mirror to actually help her kind of scan the underside of plants. So while I say it's helpful for you to be able to be physically mobile to help with this project, it's not actually necessary. Human ingenuity can get you out of that one too. So really quickly, this activity 1 I was mentioning. So this is the most simple place. This is where we recommend all people start. And this is where you are just checking out milkweed plants at your site for eggs and caterpillars. So here's a close-up of an egg. They're actually really beautiful, and they're characterized by their ovoid shape. So they're not perfectly spherical. They have a little bit of a glossy texture to them and these longitudinal ridges. So if you see something on a leaf and you're not sure, and maybe you take your magnifying glass or hand lens, the shape, the color, and those ridges are going to be your identifying feature. And Bit of a personal note is that my background is actually in marine biology. I spent a few years studying large coastal fish. So when I started coordinating this project, I thought, I don't really know if this is going to get me excited. And I was so wrong. I started monitoring a site at the Arboretum a few weeks ago, and it's so exciting to find an egg. I was kind of squealing to myself in the middle of the forest. When I was out this past weekend, I monitored 47 plants in an hour, and I saw 34 eggs. One plant that had 3 eggs on them. And it really is like a super fun treasure hunt where you're actually, contributing valuable data and learning about your environment and connecting to nature. So it's really a win-win. And then these 2 photos, these are some that I took this past weekend just to show you. So if you can spot the egg here just above my blue dot, it looks maybe about like a third of the size of a grain of rice. And then on this photo, on the underside of this leaf, because I mentioned more commonly the eggs are laid on the underside of the leaf, we have 1 here and 1 here. And after you get used to identifying them, it's pretty easy to do so. And then caterpillars, so that's the other part. If as you are checking out your plants, you find caterpillars, we ask that you identify the different instars. So just some great photos here. This is a first instar that just emerged and is about to eat that eggshell. And then we have a 5th instar here. So really quickly, there's just a simple data sheet that we ask you to fill out. So this is the simplified version, which is data sheet 1A. We're just asking you for your totals here. So over your whole site, how many eggs are you seeing, how many of each instar? And then datasheet 1C is a slightly more complex one. So if you're monitoring with kids, we recommend 1A, 1C, helpful for adults. And this is where we're asking you to record kind of what's on each individual plant. So a great part of this project, similar to Journey North, is that the results are available in real time. So after you upload your data and enter it all in our data portal, you can actually see these graphs of what you have observed over your monitoring. This one is from 2020, and the legend is cut out of this, but this light blue color, these are eggs, and then each of these other colors represents different stages of instars. So it's pretty neat to actually one season is just one season, so it's pretty cool to see from one year to the next how things shift and also how they are affected by different climate events, weather events, what have you. So just to really drive home that this data is very valuable and we do use it. So MLMP, our group, has published 27 peer-reviewed papers that include citizen science collected data. And we're really proud that this is more than any other Monarch citizen science project. Though I know it's not a competition, it's not a race, it's all helpful. And just generally, Monarch citizen science projects, because there are quite a few out there that you can participate in, they all provide a collective portrait of monarch biology. And they all make significant contributions to the scientific literature and to our conservation goals and actions. So while I'm biased and I would love for you to monitor with us, what we're really looking for is just to get involved in some way. So other activities, as I mentioned, there are 4 activities as a part of this project, and we went over activity 1, which was measuring monarch density, and then we have a few other ones here, so you can track rainfall. Activity 3 is a really cool one. You can help estimate parasitism rates by tachinid flies, which is this guy down here. That does involve rearing monarchs. And activity 4 is quantifying milkweed quality. So we're looking at different characteristics of milkweed that make them successful and appealing to females. Oh, sorry, I'm going the wrong way there. There we go. So yeah, just thank you so much for having Nancy and I hope you maybe are a little bit inspired to participate in a citizen science project about monarchs. We certainly would love to have you at MLMP. And if anyone is interested in getting involved, you can head to our website, mlmp.org, which I have right here. You can find us on all of the social media platforms. And if you email us at info@mlmp.org, I am the face behind the screen that will answer your email, and happy to work with you and help explain any questions that come up. Great. Thank you so much, everyone.
So everyone, remember that, well, first of all, thank you for Julia and Nancy for presenting. I learned a lot. It makes me want to go out and monitor monarchs. But if anyone has any questions, please either unmute yourself and you can ask them, or type them in the chat box, and I'll read them out however you want to submit that. Well, to get us started, I guess, Julia, what has been the most interesting thing you've learned since starting this job, since you're pretty new here?
Great question. Oh my goodness. To be perfectly honest, people in the monarch world are very, very passionate, which is phenomenal. And obviously the species need it. And the species I was studying before this in the marine world were fish that nobody cared about truly other than myself. So it's actually really cool for me to kind of join a community where, yeah, you know, the citizens and community members are so knowledgeable. And sometimes they ask me questions and I go, that's fantastic. And I don't know the answer, but I'll figure it out. You know, I think just what amazes me about monarchs is that, you know, they have a really wide distribution comparatively. I'm from Southern Ontario in Canada, and, you know, I grew up seeing them everywhere. And you kind of take for granted, because they are so widely distributed, that it doesn't dawn on a lot of people that they actually, there are major conservation threats, and, you know, they were nearly listed as endangered. So pretty interesting that you have this charismatic, iconic species that so many people know about. But yeah, we definitely need to continue spreading the conservation word.
That's great. So a couple of questions have come in. So Robert asked, is there a way for monitoring programs or organizations interested in protecting their populations to partner with new subdivisions to encourage homeowners to plant native species, in this case, milkweed? Most of the time, people design their gardens based on what's available in garden centers and aren't educated on how plants available there mostly don't benefit insects and wildlife. Can there be some intervention right at the start of home ownership? So do you have any advice for this problem?
Yeah, I mean, great question, Robert, and great idea as well. That would be fantastic. You know, the home that I live in is in a relatively new subdivision, and unfortunately, some of these new subdivisions have pretty strict rules about, you know, you can't have a wild front yard. You have to have grass, and that's, you know, obviously really disappointing and can be really discouraging. So I think it's not quite that easy with some of these new subdivisions. They kind of want the monoculture grass, but fantastic idea. And our MLMP, we are kind of a subsidiary of this group called Monarch Joint Venture. They're based out of the Twin Cities in Minneapolis. And they actually kind of work with and coordinate like over 100 different monarch organizations across North America. And they tackle some of these larger issues. You know, one of them, the Integrated Monitoring Monarch Program. It's always a mouthful. This is part of what they're doing, is trying to get landowners more aware of this problem and trying to encourage them and incentivize them to yeah, diversify their gardens and plant some pollinator-friendly species.
So I'll mention one more aspect here in Wisconsin. We have the Wisconsin Monarch Collaborative. Many states have similar collaborative, and they're all part of regional efforts too. So there is a lot of work going on in Wisconsin in different subsectors, and they're working with nurseries to increase the availability of milkweed, native milkweed seed. Also working with some larger Home Depot type organizations to, you know, promote the sale of milkweed. So there are state-specific things, but again, I think we have a great role to play. And if you do belong to a residential community that is reluctant to plant milkweed or native gardens, that, you know, you can become that spokesperson and an ambassador that, you know, hands out the flyers and lets people know that milkweed are not weeds. They're not poisonous. In some places that has been an issue in the past. So you can be a conveyor of great information.
So we have another question. Deborah says that she has milkweed plants in her yard, monarchs flying, but rarely sees eggs or larvae. What might be quote unquote wrong with her milkweed plants?
Ooh, that's a great question. Nancy, do you have an answer for that?
We know I actually have a number of people who have sent similar type questions. So Deborah, you're not alone in asking this question. And, you know, I don't have a specific answer for your situation. But what I do suggest to at least my Journey North volunteers is that it's really important for them to let us know year by year whether they don't see eggs one year and they see eggs another year, because as with many citizen science programs, it's the long-term trends that will really indicate a pattern. So this one-off year, and maybe it is just an off year for you or your location, it may not be indicative of long-term trends. So you know, keep at it. keep your milkweed and keep looking for eggs and larvae.
Nancy, do monarchs prefer some species over others? Some species of milkweed. Sorry, do monarchs prefer some species of milkweed over others? I've heard people say this, and just was curious if that could be.
I'm not sure I know the specific answer to that one, and maybe Julie, I'll pass it over to her. I have common milkweed in my garden, so that they seem to like that, but that's a good question. Julia, do you know?
I mean, no, I kind of only have anecdotal evidence, and people will tell you like, oh, they love the butterfly milkweed in my yard, and oh, they love the common milkweed in my yard. So I don't know that we actually have the data to answer this question. But as a pitch, the more data that you collect and submit to us, the closer we are to finding that answer.
I will say, though, that monarchs, well, the milkweed is really critical to monarchs. They also need nectaring resources also. So even if, for example, they don't like your milkweed plants, Deborah, you also may be a source of nectar for those adult monarchs. So
we have a new question from Becky. Is it best to sow all milkweed seeds on top of the snow in the winter, or do different species have different treatments? I've heard always sow milkweed on top of the snow.
That's a great question. And I apologize, Becky. This is the perfect example of information I do not know yet. Nancy, do you have an answer for this?
And okay, I should have given my disclaimer. I am not an entomologist, or I did not come from background in monarch biology. I too was in water quality monitoring, so I know a lot about aquatic bugs. So I don't know the answer. That's my long way of saying that I do not know. But I bet, Jennifer, you're keeping track of these questions. Does it log in? So if you could send this list of questions that we don't know, we will for sure find out answers, because the Arboretum has a well-known native plant gardener outreach coordinator herself, and I bet she would be able to answer this immediately.
So, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to say that this group, the Monarch Joint Venture I mentioned, you can find them at monarchjointventure.org. They have a lot of really phenomenal resources, both just pages on their website and videos you can watch, live interviews with, for example, our Arboretum director, Dr. Karen Oberhauser, where she does cover a lot of these questions. So the great thing about the Monarch world, as I mentioned, is that there's so many people who are part of it. If you Google it, you could probably find a few different answers to your question. But yeah, like Nancy said, we have some people who we could ask, and we can get back to you about that as well.
And we can also, what we've done in the past for other folks is we send out the recording, and we can also have any answers to questions that you guys find as part of that email that goes out to everybody. So you can make sure that you get it. So, so Robert suggested that you just need to stratify the seeds, not place them in the snow. I cannot speak to that, but that is one suggestion. So Robert said, asked, is there a way for monitoring programs or organizations to partner? Oh, sorry. I don't know why that resubmitted.
Sorry, guys. The same again by accident.
Robert, do you want to ask a question?
No, sorry. I said I posted it by accident again.
Oh, no problem.
It was a good question. It deserved to be brought up twice.
Okay. Does anyone have more questions?
I have just a comment on Robert's reposted question here. Sometimes things take a long time, and there is a initiative called Monarchs in the Rough that works to target golf courses. And over several years now, this program has made great inroads with golf courses across the country. And so that's one case where you might not have thought there was a receptive audience, but now golf course managers are doing redesigns in part because of this growing concern and stakeholders interested in making these things happen. So it just popped into my mind.
Yeah, and the other thing with, I guess I can just share one thing that feedback that we've gotten from some local subdivisions is just talk with folks. If you're interested in native plants, a lot of times they just haven't thought about it before. So if you're passionate about it and can explain what the benefits are and how it won't massively change the vision for the subdivision, like just adding a few native flowers, native milkweed, those kind of things. A lot of times they haven't thought about it before, but can be receptive. It really just seems to depend on the HOA, and people have had really different experiences from feedback we've gotten.
And Jennifer, if I can add one last thing. So starting this Friday, July 23rd, is the start of the 5th Annual International Monarch BioBlitz. So it's starting July 23rd until August 1st. It's just a really nice time to kind of join and get a part of the Monarch world. There are many different places that you can kind of contribute your data to. MLMP is just one of them. And to incentivize people, we are going to be giving away a really cool new garden sign that is all about the MLMP if you submit data to our group. But yeah, honestly, there's so many opportunities to get involved. So I hope you take a look around over the next few weeks.
So I'll put a plug in for Journey North. And so you'll notice that there's a little bit of an overlap, but the big news is that this Tri-National Monarch BioBlitz is a collection of all different organizations, 5 different main groups that are monitoring monarch citizen science efforts, but that we're committed to sharing the data on the back end with the Tri-National Monarch knowledge network. It was this knowledge. So this is again quite a undertaking to share data from different organizations, and so this BioBlitz is one place where that actually is happening, which is very exciting to me. So
that sounds like a great opportunity, and hopefully you get a lot of participants and a lot of great data.
Yes.
If we don't have any more questions, I would like to thank you guys, or thank Julia and Nancy one more time, and thank all of you guys for attending. And hopefully I'll see you next month.
Yeah. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for having us.